Dispatchers help callers on the worst days of their lives. For over 25 years, we've been there. A silent partner in millions of calls thanks to our redundant and diverse networks that ensure call delivery. Today, cities are bigger, traffic more congested, and the challenge is more complex. But you're never alone, because InDigital is quietly improving, implementing, and driving the next generation of 911, so you're supported in every situation. Make the switch at indigital.net.
Have you ever met a 911 professional and asked, what's the worst call you've ever taken? Well, here's your answer. I heard your last breath the night you flipped your four-wheeler. I tried to call you the day you committed suicide by driving your car into a tree. Blue face, cold to the touch. I helped you with CPR after you found your infant face down, not breathing. It messed me up. I did everything I could, but it wasn't enough. You were with me from the beginning, Grandma. 27 years later, I took the 911 call when you died. How fitting to be there for me in the beginning, and I was there for you in the end. I miss you, Grandma. I am 911. This is but a glimpse into the world of emergency dispatch. But what is it really like to answer a call during someone's nightmare? What is the impact on the first responder answering the call? Available on Amazon or where you purchase your favorite books and ebooks. Imagine listening. Your worst day is our everyday.
This is Jordan, and you're listening to the Code 7 Podcast Network.
Warning. This episode contains the 3 A's of podcasting: adult content, adult language, and awesomeness. You've been warned.
About a week after the storm, we were so wore out of all the amount of calls and the type of calls there is. I had one guy who was calling from New Jersey, and his voice was the most settled voice I could ever imagine. And he said, I see you guys. And it gave me chills when he said that, because I'm like, what does he mean he sees us?
Yeah.
And he's like, I see you guys are working nonstop. You're there for your community. He said, we see you guys out here. And I just wanted to call and tell you that we're praying for you guys, and that your town is going to come back better than it was before.
Wow.
And he said, I hear it in your voice how tired you are, but I just want you to know we see you guys, and we're here for you guys, and we're praying for you guys. And to hear that in the midst of a very long day, and then hear this guy telling you this, was like, wow, that's the refuel I needed.
Right, yes, yeah.
Welcome to Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them.
Hey, what's going on? This is Ricardo with the Code 7 Podcast Network, and this is Within the Trenches, true stories from the 911 dispatchers who live them. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
It has been a day. There's been a lot of stuff going on this week, and I was driving over here where I'm at right now. I'm currently out at Buncombe County Public Safety. I got it. Yes. I got it. Before we started recording, I was repeating it to make sure that I had it right. But there's a lot of stuff that's been going on this week here in North Carolina. I've been having a lot of fun with everyone, just teaching, recording episodes, and we have got an excellent episode today. But really quick, this episode is sponsored by InDigital, the leader in next-gen core services, and shout out to subscribers. As always, thank you very much for everything. And I am here with Amy, and she's a 911 professional with Buncombe County Public Safety, and we're out here in North Carolina, and just welcome to the podcast. Finally, you were we met virtually.
Yes.
And that was for Dare to Be Great. You were on there sharing your story as well as your talk and stuff, and it was just amazing. And it's awesome to be here. Got a chance to walk around in your center. You showed me around, introduced me to all your folks there. So thank you for that. That was awesome. You have an excellent center. The screens, dude. Like the screens alone are really cool, man. And the lighting that you have in there, I felt like I was at home. It was really nice.
Yeah. Thankfully, we had gotten just renovations a few months ago, so it's brand new.
Well, so those things are brand new, but I will say also that when I was pulling up here, I was talking to my sister, and I told her, I said, I don't know if I'm at the right place or not, because it looks like I'm coming up to a castle of some sort. I don't know. So for those who are watching and listening, kind of explain the outside of the place and what this place used to be.
Yeah. So it does look like a castle. We call it the castle. It used to be like an elderly people retirement place.
Yeah.
And so it has held a lot of different stories. I don't know exactly how old the building is, but it is pretty old.
And from what you were telling me, it's very possible that it's haunted as well.
Possibly.
Yeah. I mean, when you see it from the outside and the glow of the light, especially at night, I was like, oh, I don't know what's going on here. It's like, this is, but it's really cool.
It's really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool and everything. And I'm happy to be here with you and just to hear more about your story. So how did you get into public safety to begin with?
So I actually found the job online. I was working as a translator for the hospital, and I wanted to do something more for my community. I knew how much it was a struggle for our Spanish-speaking community, and so I wanted to find something that would really make a difference in someone's life. And I came across this job, and I thought, well, how good would it be to be able to speak the language when someone is in dire need? And that's how I came across it. And I have no background in public safety, so everything was new to me. I didn't know what I was getting myself into.
So you end up coming in. I mean, did you get a chance to do like a sit-along in there or anything like that?
No.
You didn't even get a sit-along?
No.
Oh, man. So you really didn't know what you were getting into. So you applied, you go through the process, the hiring process, and then your first day coming in is the first time you see everything?
Yeah.
Okay, so for those who are watching and listening, kind of, I guess, what was that like for you? Like, kind of paint that picture for everyone. You walk in, what is it that you see, and how are you feeling during that time?
Well, I thought we would only take the calls, but to my surprise, like, wow, do you actually do radio traffic for your officers or firefighters or EMS? And I was like, man, there's more to it, like DCI, checking for warrants. And I'm like, wow, it's not just taking calls. And then seeing like the 6 screens, it was like, wow, how do we handle all this?
Right. Yeah. So did you feel overwhelmed at all? Or did you have that question that a lot of us have sometimes in this profession of, can I do this?
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, I had never done it before. And it was the first time that I was actually getting to know the culture, the type of calls they were receiving, and then how some of my peers would have to handle the call and then radio traffic. So you kind of get the double whammy in dispatch because you're getting the call and then you're hearing your officers when they get on scene developing the call. And so I was very impressed, but I also, something really clicked when I was in there. I was like, if someone is, let's say having a heart attack and they speak Spanish, how long does it take to get language line on the line? Every second counts.
Right.
And so then I knew, like, man, God made it for me to be here for a reason. And when every second counts, it has been an incredible journey.
Do you feel like it got into your blood rather quickly? Like you were in and you were looking around, you started doing things, you have that realization as well, and you're like, I'm where I'm supposed to be.
Yes, that. And I was young then. I was 25 when I first started. And you have that thrive of, I can do it all. I want to do it all.
Yeah.
And so, I was very outgoing with wanting to take calls and learn. And so I was very impressed in the amount of work and how quickly my coworkers would work throughout the day and taking the calls and stuff. So, yeah.
Oh man. So how long was the training process then?
I would say probably about 4 to 5 months, and I trained on call taking. I was with the DACA program at first, and I could not do DCI. So then I became just a call taker for the first 4 years until I got my citizenship. And then I started training for dispatch, which I got 2 days, and then got released to just dispatching. And
Wait, what?
yeah. Well, I mean, think about it. I had been in it for 4 years
That's
within
true.
the room.
That's
I had
true.
heard it.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew, and I like to observe my coworkers. And so I kind of knew, already what to do. I just had to learn the 10 codes
Yeah.
and clearance codes, and everything else just came natural.
Were you nervous at all when it was finally your turn? You're like, I've been observing this whole time, and now it's my turn to do this.
At first I was, but I was also excited because it was something new. And I knew that I was also going to be able to do more stuff, because it's hard sitting as a call taker watching your peers be overwhelmed and you can't help them.
Right.
And after I became a dispatcher, then I was able to do it with them and help them get through the day.
That's
and when
awesome.
we would get busy.
So when it was finally your turn to be, also taking these calls and everything else, do you remember your first call, or maybe some of those earlier calls that you were taking at the time?
I do. At the time, my hardest call, I think I had been released for like maybe a week, and I had a child caller, and he called 911, and he said, my mom had been shot and my 2 siblings had been shot, and he hung up. That's all we got. No address, no nothing. So my instinct was, keep calling back till I get it back. I need to find out where he is. I call back. On the 3rd time I call back, he finally answered again. And, sometimes we're like praying that it's not that, but once he started describing what he had seen and what had happened, we already had units en route in fire and EMS, and he said, my mom had been shot and she's gone. My brother and my sister were shot and they're gone, and my brother is shot. And you could hear in the background the screams of his brother injured and his younger sibling standing with him. And it took us, as a dispatcher, every minute feels like an eternity.
Right. Yes. No, I agree.
And
Yeah.
I thought it felt like I was with him on the phone for maybe 30 minutes, which it wasn't. It was, maybe 5 minutes. And then at one point, I remember in training, my trainer had said that the children caller could be hard, but they're also the ones that give you the most information.
Yes.
And I learned that day that was true. But I had to speak with the child at the same level as they were,
Right.
speaking to them like they were my friend, or I was with them in a way that was caring. And that's how I got him to calm down. And he was stressed out, yes, because of the situation. He was very calm, miraculously, like you could understand everything he was saying. And then I would ask him, to give me a person's name and vehicle description, and I got everything. I would ask him, and then at one point he said he's coming back. And my worst fear was, oh man, am I going to hear this while I'm on the phone with him? And luckily it was one of our officers. And until I heard the officer next to him, he yelled out, "I want my mommy." And that was the last of the call. When I disconnected with him. And we were so busy that day. It was just dropping that call and going to the next one.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Did you end up getting any closure out of that? Like, did you find anything else out?
Well, we knew that his mom and 2 siblings were deceased at the time, and his brother survived. The child had grace wounds. And so did his sibling. We actually attended the funeral for his mom and 2 siblings. My manager went with me to see them, and it was very, very heart-wrenching to see, that a child had to endure such pain. So, yeah.
Those are probably some of the hardest calls.
Yes.
Especially when it has to do with children, because they're just innocent,
Yes, they are.
And but you're right. and with your realization and everything that they are the best callers.
Yes.
And it's because, they're used to following or listening to adults and everything else. But when you get an adult that calls in, it's just like, it goes all out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
sure.
little bit harder to get them to answer some questions or whichever. So it's an interesting profession.
It is.
Just through all of it. So, you've got that call that you took early on and all. Was there a debriefing or anything? Or like you said, you went to the next call.
Yeah, there was. Following it, we had a couple of debriefings. But I think the hardest part for me was that I had 4 children, and each child was the same age as those children's that were in that call. So it was hard for me not to have that survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
Because I got to go home, and with him saying, like, I want my mommy, man, that stuck. And it still sticks to that moment because my children calls me, I want my mommy, and it brings you back to that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That specifically right there. I can't imagine hearing that from your own kids, and then in 911, for those who are watching and listening, there are a lot of times where there are what we call triggers, whether it's a noise or a scream or like that, and that is definitely a trigger.
Yes.
And once you have all of these hard calls, you have to figure out how to move forward, like how to manage it and everything. And that one right there would be a kind of a hard one to try to manage.
Yes.
So with that, self-care,
yes.
like that's a big thing that a lot of us talk about. With that call and some other calls before we talk about what we're going to be talking about as well, like what are some of the ways that, like, after that, like, what do people tell you, or for yourself even, how did you kind of work through it?
Well, unfortunately, when you're young, you feel like you can take on the world.
Yes.
And at that time, I thought, well, I look around me, everybody seems to be good. Nobody's struggling with it. Why should I? And so we went to the debriefings just to, they tell us that you might hold a piece of the puzzle that might help somebody else. So I went to them and I attended them. But then after that, everything was silent. Everybody seemed to be back to normal. And honestly, I had never experienced something like that. So I didn't know what to look out for. I didn't know the reactions you should be feeling or how to react to it. And for a lot of years, that was an issue. And finally, once I was able to get to responder services that we have here, thankfully they were able to help me process it, cope with it, utilize an EMDR or prolonged exposure therapy. That has been great help.
Yeah, and also you've got a friend down here that people may or may not be able to see, but you have Sophie here.
Yes, she came in after 4 years of being here. Finally, I learned about service dogs and how they can help you with mental health. And the misconception of them just being therapy dogs and what's the difference between one and the other.
Yeah.
I educated myself on how they could help me and how I could bring them to work if you file, your documentation with your agency and get them certified and everything. And that has been an amazing help.
That is always good. And I wish, when I was in dispatch, not that it was really that long ago, but I wish that when I was there were more, people talking about emotional support animals, because that's definitely a big thing. There are a lot of dispatch centers out there that have ESAs now. Some folks, they have different ones. So they have reptiles out of Georgia, in Indiana, they've got a skunk. In Colorado at Aurora 911, they have a little lamb named Muffin, which I will be honest. In the beginning, I thought they were joking around with me, and they're like, "No, no, no, no. We do. You'll meet her when you come in." I'm like, "Okay, okay." And yeah, sure enough, we were recording some episodes. Open the door, and she comes running in. I was like, it was like a little kid. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I was like, look at this.
Yeah.
And she's just kind of jumping around and like, moving in and stuff, just like
Oh,
I've seen, Sophie do and everything. And I thought, oh, she must have known I needed a little bit of a hug
yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, ESAs are amazing and
Yes.
very, very well, just awesome to have in a dispatch center, especially for the mental health and wellness
Yes.
for a lot of people
Yeah.
that are dealing with these things. So I want to segue now into something that happened fairly recently, and that is Hurricane Helene. And just driving over here before it got dark, just look, and I don't know if that's the way it was before or after, but just being on the highway and looking on the side, things look decimated.
Yeah.
Like the trees just look like they're completely snapped. Some spots it just looks like it's just blown away. And I was talking to my mom and my aunts while I was driving over here, and I was telling them,
Mm.
and they said, well, "You need to be careful." And I said, "Well, I'm going to be careful." I said, "But I'm on the main highway." I said, "I'm just telling you what I see off the side, and if that just little bit, looks like that, I can't imagine what the rest of the areas look like." And
Yeah.
one of your coworkers actually showed me some video footage of the area, what it looked like in the daylight, and it I can't even imagine. So. So for you, from what you remember, um, I guess kind of either looking at the Weather Channel or whatever you were looking at, seeing it coming up. I mean, what was that like for you and your crew, really, as you saw it coming up, and I guess just trying to prepare for whatever was about to happen?
Honestly, we all left our homes not knowing what it was going to be like. We were coming in that morning at 7 o'clock in the morning is when we do our shift change, and the wind started to pick up when we were driving in. So we knew it was going to be, we've always gotten alerts for tropical storms, but we had never seen anything to the extent. And things change so quickly. It was, within 20 minutes after or an hour or two, we were seeing the transition of the calls from, being either escorts to a shelter or to swift water rescues. And it just everything changed so quickly. And there were so many calls that it was just incredible. And we were, as you've seen in the room, we don't really hear much of the noises outside. So we were really finding out how things were on the outside from our callers, really, because we were just so busy. We really didn't even have time, to blink, perhaps because we were just going from call to call.
Do you have cameras like on the outside of the building?
Yeah.
So were you able to see like some of that, just like, I don't know, maybe trees blowing or just like the amount of rain that was falling?
So honestly, for us, we were so busy, we couldn't even look above what our screens were because we were going nonstop.
You say that you didn't have a chance, really to stand up or look around or anything like that, because also, when I kind of picture what was going on during that time, and because I've seen the inside of your center, all of like the way the cubicles are, I remember when I was in dispatch, would be able to kind of just look up over a little bit and just see all the craziness that's going on, the phones going off, all this other stuff. And, you kind of mention as well that when you're sitting in there, there's a certain tone that was going off. And that was for calls that were on hold.
Yeah, like they were on the 911 queue waiting to be picked up, and it almost sounds like a fire alarm, and it's that loud. And it's just to remind us that, hey, we got a call on hold waiting to be answered in the queue. And so we were just so overwhelmed with calls that it was also overflowing to other agencies that were helping us answer them. And so I just remember looking up, and my coworkers answering the officers and radios, writing down stuff on sticky notes and paper and passing them on to the EOC, because they also had their search and rescue teams that they were sending out. So we were trying to relay the most critical calls to them, to be able to rescue people when they were in dire need. And so it was just, I had never seen so many calls in my entire life altogether.
I can't imagine going through that, everything that you're hearing. So on top of that tone going off, what else are you seeing? Is it just you dialed in to your screen and like you don't even see anybody else or anything what's going on with the amount of people who are working at the time? Or, I mean, can you hear like everyone else's conversations at the same time? Or are you just so dialed in that it's just you and your station?
Believe it or not, during it, I was so dialed in, but when it came down to like a really critical, like a person is floating down the river, it like almost like where's this happening, right? Or if it was someone trapped in a vehicle or somewhere, it was like it would catch our attention immediately.
Right.
And that's when we would look up to try to find out, is this a duplicate call, or do we have somebody in route? And so those were kind of like the reminders or wake up calls during it to bring us, you know, being focused on our own and answering our calls, to also room awareness of what was going on around us as well.
I can't, just now with what you said, I can't even imagine um, taking a phone call or hearing someone else take a phone call and you hear them, it just happened to kind of cut through, right? Everything else that's going on, the chaos that's going on in there. But for someone to say, someone has seen a floating body going by, or just something to that effect. I mean, that alone, just hearing you say that is pretty trippy. Like
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. There's so many calls, right, that we take, and even let's just say, for example, like a drowning or something.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen all the time, but I can only imagine with something like this that was going on and
Yeah.
someone saying there's a body floating by. I mean, as you said, you hear it and you're trying to see, is this the same call? Is it another call?
Yeah.
Is it more and more people
Yeah.
that are seeing this one person or
Yeah.
multiple people? Like I can't even fathom that whole situation.
Yeah, and at some point, we would have callers seeing like someone hanging onto a tree or a sign. We had some children as well, like they were holding onto a street sign. Then you hear the officers trying to get to them before they get swept away because the waters were moving so quickly. And so you go from your call to transition into your radio traffic, and you're following the whole thing, and you can only hope, like, we hold our breaths tight to until we hear them. Like, luckily they were able to rescue both children, and we were
Yeah.
all just sighed in relief, like, man, okay, let's move on to the next one,
Right.
and to the next one. And that's just
Do
how it
you
was.
do you for that moment, do you cheer, or is it like, do you cheer in your head, or is it like we got one and you just continue going, or is it just you just hear it and it's in the back of your mind and you just have that, like you said, that like that sense of relief?
I think during it for us, it was like, man, that was good. They were able to rescue it, to remind us that even though it was such a catastrophic event,
Mhm.
that there were some good instances where a good outcome was, because
Right.
it's so easy to get synced into the bad calls, that when we would have those, it was like, moment to cheer on, a moment to emphasize, like, this is why we're doing it, to keep saving lives
Right.
during it. And so, man, and Sophie was there, reminding us as well, headbutting us during it, like, hey, come on, you need
Yeah,
some time.
yeah. I'm sure she was working overtime like with everybody else, right? Everything going on and
Yeah,
stuff. And I can't even imagine, for her as well, because I'm sure, she after a while starts to feel it as well and
yeah,
stuff. So you've got all of this that's going on, but along with hearing that, there might be people floating by or houses floating by or whichever, officers trying to get to folks, what are some of the types of calls that are coming in? Are there people that are calling for help and you're like, you just going to have to get on the roof, or like what types of calls were kind of coming in? As long as you feel comfortable talking about it, right?
Yeah, so some of the calls, started when the mandatory evacuations started happening. We had some callers who didn't have a vehicle, so we needed to do escort calls. And they quickly, within 20, 30 minutes, turned into swift water rescue because the water started to grow and rush through so quickly that for many, they didn't even have time to get out, or they got out in their car and then got stuck in their car,
Yeah.
and trees were falling so much that it blocked roadways, or some roadways were washed off. And then we had some Spanish speaking callers who had a split second, like we had to translate for them to be able to get their address and where they were. And so a lot of them, elderly, couldn't get to higher grounds because of their disability or whatnot. So we had to do the swift water rescues. We had a father with his wife and child. I took a call for him, and he was already on the roof, and the water was reaching the roof, and he asked, what to do, or needed help. And at the time, all we could do was, seek higher ground. And he understood the message, and he said, "All right, I'll let you go so I can help my wife and child." And the line disconnected. And so those were some of the hardest ones, and then leaving work to be able to see all the destruction, and, going out to my son's school, that a lot of the trailers and stuff were washed into his school. And so it was one of the hardest things to be able to live in person, hear it, and then live it in person
Right.
was hard.
So, we kind of talk about that chaos that's going on. At one point, cell service just kind of ceases to exist.
Yeah.
And where you were probably hearing all of this stuff, now it might just be like nothing is going on, and almost an eerie feeling as well. Are people still able to call in? Not so much call in, but are they able to text in? Or how are some of those things going? And if they are you able to respond? And are they even responding back?
So I noticed like an overwhelming amount of 911 texts when the phones went dead, and the cell service went blank. We were still receiving 911 texts, but when we were texting back, we weren't getting an answer, or if they were answering, it was taking a very long time for it to come back. And so, and some of them were very serious calls that were coming through as a text. And I had the one with the breech baby, that they could see the baby feet, but they couldn't get out because the road was completely washed off. So the only way that they could be rescued by helicopter. And I went home knowing that day, that whether or not knowing whether or not they could even be rescued, that if that was a possibility. And thankfully, I found out a few days later that they were able to be rescued and that a baby girl was born. And so that was a big sense of relief.
That is just really a kind of a beacon of hope to be able to have something like that happen
Yeah.
throughout all of this chaos that's going on, but also just kind of backtrack a little bit. When the cell service goes out, what is that like now for yourself? And I'm sure your coworkers are feeling the same thing, because I'm sure you're trying your best while all of this is going on to kind of think about your families, because you're all here. You're completely separated. You
Yeah.
leave home to come here and do what you have to do through your service in this profession, and they're out there. And in the back of your mind, while all of this is going on, you're also thinking about them, and where you might have been getting text messages before, now cell service is gone. What is that even like now with your families?
Well, I mean, we were sitting in our chair when the cell service went out. It was the biggest sense of helplessness we could ever had, because some of our coworkers, lived deep in the country and they couldn't get a hold of their family. We didn't know if they were okay until we got off and were able to physically go see. And for some, they couldn't find out till the next day.
Yeah.
And it was the hardest thing, that we were incommunicated a few days until we finally had cell service, and it was tough because you didn't know. But we had some sense of idea the areas that were affected the most. So we held to the hope that the areas that some of our families were in were okay
Yeah.
because they didn't get hit as bad as other areas that we knew were in the flood zone.
So you kind of mentioned, everyone was in here working like crazy. I mean, there was like 10 or so people in your center when you were touring, giving me a tour out there, which thank you again for that. But I can just imagine how much more packed it was in there. And in here, we're currently in the EOC room. The amount of people that are in here working on all of this stuff. I mean, did you have people in here that were taking calls, or maybe not so much taking calls, but um, I don't know, just calling people for? Could you even call anyone for like trees down, wires down? Like a lot of times in big storms or minor storms, this was an enormous one. You're calling for stuff like that, but can you even do any of that?
Well, we had every desk filled up. We had
Mhm.
coworkers who had stayed over and helped out and take calls, and we even had other desks that were also taking calls. Some of our higher upper management were helping us as well at times when they were available. And EOC was in here as well, and they were helping us dispatch the calls to the rescue teams. But even so, even with that, it was just such an overwhelming amount of calls that we still had calls coming in holding, and
Mhm.
and we were going through them as much as we possibly could. And when the TER teams arrive, man, that was like the biggest sense of relief
Yeah.
we all got. Everybody sighed in relief when we started seeing our TER team members come in.
Yeah.
And then we started hearing their stories when they were asked if they could come, and they were told, that they weren't going to have the basic necessities, water, this and that. And they say, I still pack my stuff and I wanted to come and help you guys. Wow.
Yeah.
Makes you fall in love with your job even more,
Right.
because who does that except a family member that is willing to be there for you?
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And I love that. Just the way you said it, it was just that, like, oh, the cavalry has arrived. Like,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
so we've
That's
got
how it
backup.
felt.
Like, people are coming and stuff.
Yeah.
So, you're working 16, maybe 18 hours, however much you were working. And just to kind of paint the picture for everyone who's watching and listening, when you walk out of this building, you can look out and see mountain area, but also kind of looking down at the rest of, shops or whatever that's there. So when you walk out after enduring this chaos, what do you see? I mean, is it nighttime? Is it daytime? And I mean, just how are you feeling and what are you seeing? Is it that sense of like, holy crap, we just went through all of that? But what was that like when you finally got to walk out to start heading home?
I think it took a long time to really calm down, because even after we went out, there was so many people here,
Yeah.
and even going out into the streets, it was dead silence because there was no power, there were no lights, and there was no internet, there was no cell phones. When my drive home, the streets were empty. Everything but like people were doing lines at the grocery stores trying to get groceries, but they didn't have power, so
Yeah.
you couldn't get gas, you couldn't get groceries for the first 2 days. They would take cash only. And it was just such an overwhelming amount. But one of the biggest takeaway from it after I went home was that my family had an idea of what I had endured during my shift, and they were there to meet the basic needs for myself. And having them there for me when I went home was the greatest blessing, to have them and welcoming home, and knowing that it was one of the hardest days in my life, and them saying, thanks for what you do, Mom. And man, that was amazing.
I can feel it from you how awesome that must have been to get there, to not only see that they were okay, but also to have that recognition and probably hugs all over the place. And it's like, welcome back home and everything.
Yeah.
And then, you end up having to do everything that you have to do and stuff. So how long were you at it? Like, did you have a couple days off, or was it just like for that day and then you came back the next day and you're
No,
just like
so
right back?
we were working for 2 weeks straight
Hmm.
till we were able to be off for 7 days, but we were working for 2 weeks straight. Our normal shifts, some days were 14 hours, um, some days were 16 hours. So it really varied. Even if we wanted to go home, there was just so many of calls that we just didn't want to go home and leave any call unanswered.
Right.
So many of us were just, okay, we can't go because there's still someone calling, needing our help. And so we were just sticking around, just helping each other and continue on our duty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the hardest things too sometimes when you're taking a high priority call. Just as an example, taking a high priority call and someone comes in to relieve you and they might be like, "Oh, I can take it for you." And you're like, "No, like this is my call. I started it. I want to finish it." Especially
Yeah.
because you want to make sure, that the people are okay, or that
Yeah.
I mean for anything else, like to get some sort of closure out of it. So
Hmm.
with this big of an incident that happened, I could just imagine the same way, but 10 times bigger, 100 times bigger, that
Yeah.
you don't want to leave your post.
Yeah.
And maybe someone was like, whoop, like, no,
Yeah.
you gotta go. Like
Yeah.
it's time. It's okay to step away. And maybe
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to hear that,
Yeah.
it's okay to step away. Like we're here and it's time for
Yeah.
relief.
Yeah. And it was that's why it's so important, like with your peers, to share, what you had experienced or what you have gone through, because it was someone it takes someone else to realize, like, hey, you need to step away, you
Mhm.
need to go. And when our next shift would come on, they were like, okay, we got it, we transition and switch out and whatnot. But after the chart teams came on and we were able to get some time away, we were able to be away to decompress. We had to do a lot of self-care, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there, of course, in the midst of all this chaos and everything, things that were going on, stuff that you were hearing that you can't even imagine? You mentioned the one call, with the baby, which was a good thing. Were there any other calls that you can remember that actually were some of those good outcomes that happened with all of this that was going on?
So after about a week after the storm, um, we were so wore out of all the amount of calls and the type of calls there is. I had one guy who was calling from New Jersey,
Hmm.
and his voice was the most settled voice I could ever imagine. And he said, I see you guys. And it gave me chills when he said that,
Yeah.
because I'm like, what does he mean he sees us?
Yeah.
And he's like, I see you guys are working nonstop. You're you're there for your community. He said, we see you guys out here. And I just wanted to call and tell you that we're praying for you guys, and that your town is going to come back better than it was before.
Wow.
And he said, I hear it in your voice how tired you are, but I just want you to know we see you guys and we're here for you guys and we're praying for you guys. And to hear that in the midst of a very long day, and then hear this guy telling you this, was like, wow, that's the refuel I needed.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
To keep going,
Yeah.
because, man, how many times can we go without being unnoticed in our profession? And for someone to take that moment to call into such a busy center during the storm and say that, it was like just the perfect call at the perfect time, because just before that call, I had taken, a recovery of a body, and it was a really hard one. And then you get that, and it was like, oh man, it gave me chills just to hear his voice, but it was such smoothing to be able to hear that calm voice
Yeah.
on that other side of the phone.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
To have those moments. You've got those couple moments there, and yeah, just out of nowhere to hear that. That is you're giving me goosebumps as well.
Yeah.
That's an awesome moment and a great memory that
Yeah.
you will have. Now,
Yeah.
what are some of the other good things that came out of it? Like, did the town come together? Did people come in and, bring you food, or were there like, massage type stuff, or I don't know, like was there certain things that came in where people were like, we're here for you as well, just like this gentleman who
Yeah.
called from out of nowhere. Were there other good things like that where people were there for you?
Yeah, so we have an embedded clinician here, and she brought other clinicians that were able to offer like EMDR therapy right after the storm, a few days after. And we also had like a few acupuncture sessions. We had some chiropractors. We had some massage therapists that were just coming in right at shift change to help us have some kind of relief in some
Right.
shape or form. And um and also like we had the debriefing at the beginning of this year, because it just has been so much of it. And then we had our peers, everybody checking on each other. We had some peers that lost their home, and we were looking to help them in different ways. Um, and then meeting those TERP members from other parts of states, we made bigger connections,
Yeah.
more friends, and they became our family. They came to help us and to our rescue, and that was our biggest takeaway, is that our family grew even bigger.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
love that. As we're getting towards the close of this episode, which again, it has been amazing to be here with you, meet everyone, and hear more about your story and everything that you all went through. What are some things that you want folks to know about, more so about what happened during this time, during Helene, the hurricane that came through, and, some of the things that you guys endured? Like, what are some of the things that you want people to know?
I think I want people to know and remember that even though it was such a big catastrophe and that no one could have prepared us for it, it remember the good stuff, the good outcome that you had, and the difference that you made in each and everyone's life. Because even though we had such an overwhelming amount of calls, at least we were here to receive as much as we could, and we were there for them when they needed us the most.
Yeah.
We're only humans, and we can only do so much. And so remember, and a lot of the agencies that I've heard stories from was that, remember, you're only a human being, and you were there to answer that call. No one else was.
Mhm.
And share your story. Be proud of what you did, and how you helped during this, because that's what's going to make you stronger, and that's what's going to help you overcome this. Don't be afraid to share what you did and what you went through, because it might help someone else who's going through the same. And that's some of the biggest takeaways we've had here, is that, sharing what everyone went through, and some of the calls they've taken, because you're not alone, and it helps you feel more welcome, or um, having friends, and sharing with your peers, because it makes a difference.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I've got one last question for you. And as we go into the wrap up of this episode, so with the time that you've had in public safety, your experience, especially with this experience that we just talked about, and really the area is still recovering, and I'm sure a lot of you are still recovering as well, whether it be through just continued talking with each other, sharing stories, or maybe any other debriefings that end up coming up, or talking with clinicians or anything like that. If you could go back in time to the beginning of your public safety career to talk to yourself, and it's not to change anything, telling yourself about certain things that are going to happen or whatever. It's not to change anything, because I feel as though, we sometimes there's some hard lessons that we learn, or there's things that we experience that maybe make us, stronger, or things that just we've lived through that bring us to where we are at today. So if you could go back in time to talk to yourself, what is some advice, or what things would you say to yourself?
I think the biggest thing would be to do a lot of self-care first and set yourself up for success. Build a strong foundation, and that foundation could look from, having a therapist, doing exercise, nutrition, anything you can imagine, anything that makes you feel better. In this case, having Sophie, or attend classes, peer support, to build a safety net so that even though some calls may not affect you as much as others, you have that safety net to rely on when you do need it is there for you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much. This has
Yeah.
been awesome. And just thank you for everything. I mean, the
Yeah.
hospitality, just coming in here, the way the building looks and everything else is just awesome. I'm so glad that we were able to do this and meet in person versus virtually when we were doing the stuff with Dear to Be Great and all.
Yeah.
And just thank you for what you do in this profession.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
been amazing. So
Thank you for
very
what
much.
you do.
I appreciate it. It has been an amazing experience. For those who are watching and listening, if you have any comments, questions, or you ever want to be a guest on the show, you can email us, and that's going to be wttpodcast@gmail.com. And you can find everything on links. That's links with 2i's.co/WTT podcast. And we got Sophie up here now. Yeah, what's going on, Sophie? She's just kind of looking at me like, what? This episode has been sponsored by InDigital, a leader next gen core services, and you can see this on Facebook, LinkedIn, X, as well as YouTube, and you can listen 24/7 on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, and withinthetrenches.net. Have a good one, everyone, and we will see you all in the next one.
Imagine listening to someone's worst day every single day. Imagine listening as someone experiences life, through their worst nightmare to the miracle of birth or a life saved. I'm Ricardo Martinez, a former 911 dispatcher, and for years, I've been recording the voices of a hidden world, ours. I've provided a space for 911 dispatchers to share their powerful stories. It started as a peer support session and continues. Dispatchers sitting together, sharing out loud, or writing down what they couldn't say. Some stories will grip you. Stories of heartbreak, resilience, and calls that haunt us long after the line goes quiet. But imagine listening is more than heavy emotion. It's about healing. It's about laughing through the chaos, lifting each other up, and reminding the world that dispatchers are human too. The lighthearted will balance the heavy. Experience the power of storytelling, a podcast for the thin gold line and those who want to understand it. This is Imagine Listening. Your worst day is our everyday. Subscribe now wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.